Well, this is one of those mornings when I woke up and I just felt like, why am I doing this? Why am I'm even making these YouTube videos? Knowing that really it's to an audience that is really pretty indifferent to the whole thesis of the program itself. If I were somebody like Eric Weinstein or some of these other YouTube people out there that were from the scientific side, and they wanted to start a YouTube channel that was pointing out all the absurdities and all the inconsistencies philosophically with what scientists are doing these days with, for example, publishing all of these frivolous and purely theoretical papers, which are nothing really but just a slight tweak of another paper that they gave just so that they can give the image that they're producing something new. And there's a lot of grounds for criticism of this kind of behavior. That the whole of the scientific community, or at least as it has been constituted over particularly the last 50 years, is so self-indulgent and so completely indifferent to its own philosophical mandate of falsifiability, and not considering anything that is not falsified, and just basically putting out various ideas one after the other that pique interest, is not consistent with the scientific ethos as it was originally conceived in the Enlightenment. You'd be justified, in doing this kind of channel. I mean, there's plenty of criticism out there to go around with what science is doing today. So many papers, so many peer-reviewed papers, so many papers that are just eagerly published and eagerly devoured by all of these people in academia, as if they're now going to discover something really shockingly different, new research, a new breakthrough that has not occurred during the last 50, 60, or 70 years. It's not happening. Science is really bogged down. It's really in a sump right now. It's really not producing too many revolutionary ideas. And it's the same for theology too. It's not either. The problem with theology is it never really has since the cross and since the New Testament writers. We go back a lot further. We have much more baggage. We have much more, to me, reason to doubt what we're doing. And really, that's what this channel is all about. But because I'm doing this within a Christian ethos that goes back post-cross, almost 2 millennia now, we are firmly entrenched in the way that we do things. And it's not likely to radically change. But that doesn't really, it really compels me more to do these videos in the end, although in the end, I really have an effective problem with doing it, just knowing that, what is the point? I have to do it. I mean, I'm just compelled to do it because I know it's the truth. I know it's something that is so basic and foundational to the faith, it just can't be ignored. It's almost like I was put in this world to bring this truth out despite the world's reaction. And really, that is the story of the prophets too. The persecution and the killing of the prophets through the biblical era was just standard. The prophets are saying things that conflicts with the current religious ethos and the way that we understand God, and this person has to be stamped out. So I'll continue, and I'm trying to do this with the amount of energy and passion that it requires, but it's really hard for me to do. Sometimes, most of the time. What I want to do in this video is I want to play off the last video on the Lord of the Sabbath and try and integrate that with a defense. And I've done this several times before, a defense of messianic prophecy as the ground of faith. And why it is so antithetical to the Christian ethos in the same way, really, that somebody like Eric Weinstein is antithetical to the scientific ethos, although he says a lot of things that are true and that should be taken seriously, but aren't because it would break the system. Well, let me go. Let me start with this. And I'm really sorry about this kind of video, but like I say, I'm compelled to do it. I know it's mostly for nerds. This one is mostly for nerds in religious philosophy, particularly Christian philosophy. And most of the people will just wave it off and, go to something else. Maybe they'll even unsubscribe me. I don't know. But for those people out there that are interested in this kind of video, I give this to you because this kind of person that I'm addressing in this video is really so important and basic to grasping the idea that I'm trying to put forth here and give it to the world and explain it rationally. These people are vital, and these people I can't ignore. For centuries, metaphysics has pursued a single ambition: to confirm transcendence, but not merely as a belief or moral intuition, but as something genuinely knowable. Now, Plato sought it in eternal forms, Aristotle in an unmoved mover, Augustine in divine illumination, Aquinas in necessary beings. Each effort aimed to secure knowledge of what stands beyond the material order. Yet the repeated outcome was the same. Transcendence affirmed conceptually, but never encountered evidentially. Now, the failure became systemic in the Enlightenment. Descartes relocated certainty into the thinking subject. Hume dissolved causation into habit. Kant restricted knowledge to phenomena structured by the mind, banishing transcendence to the realm of the nominal, where it could be postulated but never known. The modern project preserved talk of God while methodologically disqualifying any evidence by which God could actually be known. Transcendence was not refuted, it was quarantined. The decisive move was evidentiary. Valid knowledge, it was assumed, must conform to the model of natural causation, measurable, repeatable, observer neutral, accessible to instruments. The standard works for physics because physics studies matter. But when imposed universally, it silently predetermines metaphysical outcomes. A transcendent agent, if real, would not appear as an additional force inside the causal system. That would collapse transcendence into immanence. If transcendence discloses itself at all, it would do so as intentional meaning unfolding in history, not as laboratory data. This exposes the missing evidentiary category, purposive historical disclosure, not abstract deduction, not empirical anomaly, but intelligible convergence across time between prior articulated intention and later identifiable fulfillment. The evidence here is not material force, but directed meaning. Attempting to test it like a physical substance misunderstands the phenomenon before it is assessed. Fulfilled messianic prophecy fits precisely this profile. Its evidentiary force lies not in isolated miracles, but in temporal coherence. Promise followed by historical realization. Meaning articulated in advance, then instantiated in history. This is not conceptual theology. This is disclosure operating, generating interpretation after the fact. Metaphysics search for confirmation of transcendence while excluding, by definition, the only form such confirmation could take. In this way, this structure is visible in Jesus' declaration, "The Son of Man is Lord of the Sabbath." The Sabbath was not merely a moral restriction. It functioned as an anticipatory structure embedded in Israel's law, orienting time toward the completion of divine work. When Jesus claims lordship over it, he is not offering a reinterpretation of the rule. He's identifying himself as the arrival of the reality the rule anticipated. Fulfillment governs the symbol. Interpretation follows the event, not the other way around. Now, this entire problem intensifies when we consider the modern debate over naturalism and free will, for example. Under strict scientific naturalism, all mental states are fully determined by natural causation. Let us call this causal system N. From that assumption, only two options are logically available. Option 1, it is false that N determines our beliefs. Option 2, N is indifferent to whether the brain states it produces are true or false. Now, a committed naturalist must deny option 1 because allowing beliefs to escape natural causation undermines the entire framework. That leaves only option 2. But this has devastating consequences. If N is indifferent to truth, then contradictory beliefs are equally producible. The brain states leading someone to affirm naturalism and the brain states leading someone to deny it are both products of the same truth in different process. At that point, the epistemic ground collapses. Belief in naturalism itself becomes nothing more than a causally generated brain state, not a truth-tracking judgment. The position does not refute itself logically, but it destroys its own claim to rational authority. There is no principled reason to trust any belief is true, rather than merely caused. This matters profoundly for metaphysics. If cognition itself is not truth-aimed, then restricting evidence to naturalistic forms becomes self-undermining. The very framework that disqualifies transcendent evidence cannot justify confidence in the cognition performing the disqualification. Enlightenment epistemology thus collapses under the weight of its own assumptions. Only one alternative remains if truth is to be meaningful at all. Belief formation must not be exhaustively determined by truth-indifferent natural causation. Consciousness must be capable of recognizing truth as truth. That recognition cannot be reduced to material processes alone. It presupposes an immaterial dimension of consciousness responsive to meaning, intention, and disclosure. Now, this is where fulfilled messianic prophecy re-enters the discussion with renewed force. Its evidential claim does not rely on blind causal belief formation. It addresses persons as interpreters of meaning. Its evaluation necessarily involves the heart, not as emotion, but as the seat of recognition and assent. Treating such evidence as impersonal data destroys it, just as reducing language to sound waves destroys meaning. And here is where Christian theology must face its own complicity. Long before the Enlightenment, Christian thinkers began to ground their theology increasingly in conceptual deduction rather than exclusive dependence on fulfilled messianic revelation. Greek metaphysical categories were imported to stabilize doctrine. Scholastic systems refined those categories into logical architectures. Later Protestant and modern systematic theology often continued the same pattern, constructing internally coherent frameworks whose assumptions were not always derived directly from prophetic fulfillment. The intention was rigor, clarity, and defense. The effect was displacement. Revelation became something to be explained conceptually rather than an evidentiary event-generating explanation. Theology began mirroring metaphysics, treating truth as something deduced rather than something disclosed and fulfilled. Fulfilled messianic prophecy resists that move. It can't be deduced. It must be recognized. Its authority lies precisely in the fact that it was spoken beforehand and realized afterward. It presupposes consciousness capable of responding to intentional disclosure, not merely registering causal stimuli. Now, this reframes the free will debate entirely. The issue is not libertarian freedom versus determinism in the abstract. The issue is whether truth itself can be recognized. If all belief is mechanically produced, then no belief, including belief in determinism, can claim truth. If truth is real and binding, then consciousness must be more than a byproduct of matter. It must be capable of responding to meaning. That is the epistemic significance of the claim that the Son of Man is Lord of the Sabbath. It's not merely a theological assertion. It's a declaration that anticipatory structures embedded in history have met their fulfillment. The event carries authority because it was foretold. The evidence lies in convergence, not deduction. Metaphysics failed to confirm transcendence not because evidence was absent, but because it ruled out the only kind of evidence capable of confirming it. Enlightenment philosophy did so by restricting evidence to natural causation. Christian theology often did so by grounding itself in conceptual systems rather than fulfilled revelation. Both moves obscure the same thing. The evidence was never missing. It was dismissed because it did not fit the assumed template. When intentional historical disclosure is allowed to count as evidence, transcendence becomes not merely thinkable, but knowable. And that is what fulfilled messianic prophecy claims to be. Not an idea awaiting interpretation, but an event that generates interpretation, because it has already been spoken and has now arrived.